Of course, because we haven't decided on who is going to win the competition, I can't speak specifically. What I would say is that there's a great diversity, both in the kind of films and also the countries that the films are coming from. The second thing I would say is that the Argentinian films in competition are both very, very strong, and I'm very happy about that. The third thing that I've noticed is, and this maybe has to do with documentary practice in general, there's a real move towards, and really back towards, observational films. These films where there's very little intervention seen on the part of the director, no narration, very few questions asked. And we're just presented, or supposedly presented, this piece of the world. And I think that there may be two reasons for this, maybe three, that technically cameras are very portable and they record for a very long amount of time. And so it's not like in the old days where 16mm cameras and you'd have 3 minutes or 10 minutes and it was very expensive. Here, you could just film and film. I also think it has a lot to do with how the world is changing. That I think people have the sense that the world as we know it is disappearing and really having the desire to capture it. And with some of the films, I think not only the desire to capture it, but the desire to try to change it in the way that the filmmaker wants it to be changed, which I think is really important. This component of not just looking at it passively, but this feeling that, no, this is wrong, it should go this way, or this is right, and we should preserve this. The two Argentinian films that I saw were very different. They were both very, very strong, but they were both about very precise lives in the countryside. And both of them had very strong characters in the film. One of them, a character who was very, who reached out to the world and grabbed it, and a filmmaker who was trying to, who really brought a community together in this amazing way. And the other one, this very intimate portrait of a woman in her day-to-day life, which was much more internal, much more quiet. She hardly spoke at all. So I guess what I would notice is this look on rather a huge condition or city, looking at very precise people and the interrelations they have with the place and with themselves, with their own decisions in life. Yeah. This is a really complicated question for me at the moment, the relationship between making films and teaching, because I started a new job this year where I'm teaching much more. It's a very difficult balance because teaching is very creative and making a film is very creative, and sometimes this energy comes together to make both better, and sometimes all of your creativity goes into teaching and nothing is left for the films, or vice versa. And this is very, very difficult to navigate. I would say I really love working with younger people. Not all my students are younger than me, but most of my students are younger than me. And I can see the world through their eyes, because for their generation, living today is very different than for me. I also like to see, because things are changing so quickly for women, okay, so how are they navigating the world as opposed to how I navigated it at their age? What other opportunities do they have that I didn't? Or in what ways are they suffering from being women in ways that I never had to suffer? So that's really interesting. They, of course, always bring me ideas, because when you have a group of 20 people in a room, especially 20 very smart, creative, talented people, it's wonderful because somebody will say something and I'll go, okay, this this is good. This works in my script. I'm not stealing, but you know, I can borrow. I'm working on 2 projects now. I'm working on a longer film about Chinatown. It's going to be very different. It's not going to be so much historical. It's really a film about looking and what it means to look at other people. And for example, in the United States, there's a lot of criticism about looking at other people. And I'm going to try to question that, because it seems like the bonds in society are really breaking apart because of the technology. In a way, we're so close, but in the United States, especially in New York, everyone's on their cell phone. Everybody is with their portable computers, and even if you live in a neighborhood, you don't have the same day-to-day interactions. So I guess in a way I want to use technology to bring back this fabric. So I'm working on that, and I'm also wanting to work on a film that has to do with architecture and clothing. And this film would take place in many different areas of the world. And I even brought my camera here with the idea of maybe shooting some architecture in Mar del Plata to integrate this into the film. And the relationship between clothing and architecture has something to do with protection, that we wear clothing to protect us from the elements, that it's too cold, it's too hot, and also to protect us from other people looking at us too closely. And architecture is very much the same way, but then architecture has expanded to the point where we have these huge buildings that maybe we don't need, that maybe now we have to go back more to the idea of what exactly does a building have to do, and do we need so much structure around us. It also touches, I think, on environmental issues that we can't support the way we're living anymore, architecturally, clothing-wise, consumer-wise, yeah. Exhibition is difficult because of the economic situation worldwide. I think it becomes more and more difficult for festivals to survive. And festivals are a great way of bringing audience and bringing intelligent audience and bringing discussion between the filmmaker and the audience. That, I think, is very difficult. I really love the idea of seeing my work in cinema under great conditions. And it's always very nice when that happens. I would love independent cinema to be on television, but this is becoming more and more difficult. Television becomes more and more conservative everywhere. So I am getting used to the idea of the internet, which I don't think is perfect. I don't think at all it's a perfect place to see my films, but if it's the only place, then this is where I'll go. And the thing that I love about the internet is people do a search for a certain subject, like Chinatown, and then I see them going to my website and watching excerpts of my film, and this is not at all, this is a random audience. Some of them come from China, some of them come from Turkey, they come from everywhere just because they're interested in Chinatown, and this is great. The other thing with the new technology is an ex-student of mine made me a blog. So now I'm using a blog, which I never would have done previously, but all of a sudden, because of the technology, it gives me access and a kind of voice that I wouldn't have normally, and that's really wonderful, yeah. So that's aside from filmmaking, although I will start putting film up on the blog also. Filmmakers that I'm interested in right now, this is a very difficult question because the last year I really haven't been following the moving image at all because I've been so busy, and also probably because my focus has been on shooting and editing myself rather than taking movies in. And that's one of the reasons why it's a real pleasure to be here, because it's my job to watch movies, and this is really a great thing. I mean, for the last decade or so, I've almost stopped watching movies from the United States because I don't think it's a good moment in the United States. It's a very good moment for Argentina. It's been a very great moment for Iran, a lot of Asian countries, Korean films, Japanese films, Chinese films are just, incredibly strong.